Hello everyone, and welcome to another game dev video. Today, I'm going to do something new, a game jam. So if you don't know what a game jam is, it's an event where you have a limited amount of time, in this case 48 hours, to make and release a fully fledged video game along a theme or restriction. The game jam I'm participating in today is the GMTK, or Game Maker's Toolkit game jam, run by the YouTuber Game Maker's Toolkit. We will have 48 hours to complete the game, and the theme will be announced at 2 p.m. on Friday. I'm writing this part of the script at 8:30 in the morning on Friday, so I don't know the theme yet. I feel like making a 3D farming game or something if it's the theme, or maybe just like a chill game compared to the more hectic games that I've released in the past. Anyways, the game jam starts in 5 hours, so I'll see you then. So it's 3 o'clock on Friday. The jam started about an hour ago, but this was the time that I could get in. Here it is right here. I'm on itch.io. Oh, there's already one submission. So 21.2 thousand people joined, so it's a nice big jam. And so the theme is right here. The theme is joined together. Ooh, I don't know what I can do with that. Huh. My first idea was to make an RPG where you play as two characters at once, one using W, A, and D and the other using the arrow keys. Sadly, after 1.5 hours of working on this idea, I realized it wasn't a good one. I needed a new plan. Using Microsoft Word, I wrote down every single idea that came to mind. I came up with the idea to have a weight that you are stuck to, and you must fight off waves of enemies. You are unable to move while the weight is with you, but you can pick it up and move it around. In order to fit the theme, the weight is alive and annoys you while you fight. His name is Jeremy. I decided to make this 3D because I don't get to do enough 3D, and I've always wanted to make a 3D first-person shooter. So I made a new Unity project and got started. The first thing I need to make is the movement. I used a Bracky's tutorial for this, as he does make the best tutorials, and after 20 minutes, I had the basic movement in. But I haven't added the weight yet, which is the main mechanic of the game. For now, the weight is just a sphere that I made. But next, I'm going to make a rope that will scale based on the distance the player is away from the weight. The way the rope works is that it calculates the distance between the weight and the player, and then scales to compensate the distance, while following the player. Next, I need to stop the player from moving too far from the weight. I did this by moving the player towards the weight whenever the Y scale of the rope reached a certain value. This is looking good. Next, I need some weapon. Let's start with a rifle. This is a first-person shooter after all. I haven't done too much 3D modeling before, so I'm just gonna make a simple assault rifle kind of thing. So I hopped into Blender and got to work. After a bit of modeling, I have this. It looks pretty good if I do say so myself. I then imported it into Unity and started programming some functionality. For most first-person shooter games, they use raycast to shoot, but for mine, I'm just gonna have the gun create the bullets that will propel themselves forward. After I got the shooting working, I made some particles that will act as a muzzle flash. I also added limited ammo and reloads, as well as some UI in the corner to tell you how many bullets you have left. Next, I want to add a reload animation, and this is going to be really simple. All I'm going to do is lower the rifle out of use slowly, then raise it back up when it's full again. I made it and it looks great. Now that the gun is finished off, we need to make something to attack with the gun. Time to make an enemy. This enemy is going to run at you and deal damage whenever they are near you. I used Unity Nav Mesh, which is something a viewer of one of my previous videos recommended. After adding it, it worked perfectly. I made it so that they will take damage from the bullets, and I was testing whether or not it was a good enemy by putting a bunch of them together at once. And it was such a powerful force that they managed to start moving the weight that I gave a lot of mass to stop the player from moving it. So I made them all a lot weaker and it worked better. Now it's just about allowing them to damage the player. This took a little bit of programming, but I pretty much just have the enemies check if they're colliding with the player, or if they finish their path, which means they've arrived at the player, then they deal damage every 0.5 seconds. It's 10:30 at night now on the first day, and I'm gonna work for another half hour. In that half hour, I want to start on the big mechanic of the game, which is lifting up the weight. First though, I need to make it so you can stow your weapons and switch weapons, as that will make it easier for when I have to make the weapon disappear when you lift the weight. After doing some programming, I have it. This script will instantiate the first weapon you choose, then just deactivate and activate new ones as needed. It's pretty solid. Anyways, with that out of the way, it's 11 o'clock now, so I should be heading to sleep. See you all in the morning. Good morning everyone. It's now 10 a.m. on day 2, leaving me with 28 hours left in the jam. Today, I'm going to start by making the weight pickup systems. This will allow the player to move around, but they are unable to hold a weapon while they're holding the weight. And there we go. All I did was destroy the old weight whenever the player picked it up, then activated a special weight that is a child of the player. And then you can place it down by looking at the ground within a certain distance. I also kind of broke the reload animation while doing this, so I fixed that too. Next, I decided to take on a short task before my lunch break, so I implemented URP into the game. If you don't know what URP is, it's the Universal Render Pipeline, and it makes games look nice. So I quickly quickly added that. Ignore the pink weight and rope, as I'm going to make a model for those and it will make them look much nicer. Anyways, I'm going to break for lunch now. 25 hours left in the jam, let's start modeling the weight. I made it a metal ball with a face, and if you think that this doesn't look like the most annoying person in the world, I would not like to meet that person who looks more annoying. After importing it into Unity, I didn't like how the shadows were cast, so I went online and found a toon shader, and I think it fits the game really well. I've never used shaders before, and they're actually pretty interesting, if not complex. Anyway, that took a large chunk of time, so I have to work twice as hard to catch up. I made it so the weight will look at the player while the weight's on the ground, to make it really feel alive. That looks really scary though, but I'll keep it anyway. Next on my list is to make a model for the enemy. Once again, I opened Blender and got to work on an enemy model. I made it a cube so that the story can be you angered the cube people by taking their sacred sphere, which is much heavier than anticipated, and you tied yourself to it so they can't take it, but now you can't move too far away from it. That sounds like a pretty good story. This is the character I ended up designing. He's like a super secret agent or something. So I saved it and dropped it into Unity. Now that the enemy is working, time to make the levels. The way I'm going to make the levels is by making them in Blender and then importing them into Unity. I'm designing it so it's a cave because I think that's an interesting look. I blocked out this room here and I designed it to look like a cave or dungeon with a lot of squares because this is square territory after all. Now I'm just going to color it and then add some lights and stuff. It's gonna look nice. I then import it into Unity. Now that I have all the things to make the minimum viable product, or MVP, I need to decide what the gameplay is gonna be like. I could make it a roguelike, but I'm really bad at procedural generation, and I'm not sure if I have enough time to make it. I could make it a maze, which would be the easiest, where I make a bunch of configurations and you have to escape with the weight to win. Now that's a good idea, and that's what I'm doing. I put together a quick maze and it looks pretty good. The goal is to get outside, so I went to the Unity asset store and downloaded a nice looking skybox pack to use as well. I chose this night skybox because it fits really well with the color scheme. I also found a few bugs with the doors, so I fixed those. What else is there? Right, the key thing that makes this game unique, other than the movement restriction, Jeremy and his annoying lines. Let's add those. I'm planning on making them work similar to how combos work in my game Dreams, which you should check out if you haven't already, where a box will come up and something will be said. And after 2 hours, the text will come up. Now all I need to do is make the triggers for the actual combos to begin. But before I can do that, a lot of those really rely on having enemies in the game, which means I should probably add some enemies into the level. After adding that, I realized they all immediately go towards the player, so I made it so that enemies will spawn in certain rooms, for example the end room and the dead end rooms, as well as the central room. Now back to getting Jeremy to speak. There are 6 prompt types for Jeremy. Starting the game, encountering an enemy, taking damage, defeating enemies, reaching the end of the rope, or completing the level. Right now, only the starting the level and reaching the end of the rope has been added. So that means I need to make it so that Jeremy will say stuff for all of the other events. Let's start with the easier ones, defeating enemies and taking damage. Then we'll move on to enemy encounters. I added code to the player script to start a line whenever the player takes damage. Then I did the same to the enemy, but for when it dies. Next is going to be a bit harder, making a line come up when near an enemy. I ended up doing this by making a physics measurement to see if the player is within range of an enemy, then starting a line. Now we have all of the Jeremy lines implemented, except for the end of the level, so let's make that. I made a green plane outside of the maze, and made so a little cutscene plays, and then the game ends. Though, once you finish the game, nothing happens. So tomorrow we're going to add in a win screen, a lose screen, a main menu, some sounds, and if we have time, a pistol weapon. That might sound like a lot, but I think we can get it done. Anyway, I've been working all day, so I'm going to take some time to play some games and watch some TV. Then we'll finish the game tomorrow. Let's start the day with something easy, making a button prompt for when you are near Jeremy to pick him up. There we go, looking good. Next on the list is to add some sound effects to the game. As with all my games, I'm going to use JFXR to make the sounds, and once I had all the sounds created, I imported them into Unity and got to work making them work in the game. All the sounds are made and implemented, and it only took us 1 full hour. Next are the menus. Let's start with the lose screen. I made a quick and simple lose screen. None of the buttons work because there's nowhere to quit to, and also I haven't programmed a way to restart the scene, so let's make somewhere to quit to first. That means I'm making a main menu. I decided to call the game Dead Weight, which is somewhat ominous, which is not what I'm trying to go for, but it's a good description of the gameplay. I also added and implemented a play button, volume slider, how to play screen, and a quit button. Now I should make a win screen. Done! It's 9:30 AM now, so all the menus have been implemented and we just have under 4 hours until submission time. The only things left on my list of things to add are a pistol and a few other things that I put in another list called If I Have Time. Also, playtesting and publishing needs some time. Honestly, I think I'm just gonna go through and fix any problems I find and do some playtesting, then release it. I think the game is in a really good spot and I don't want to risk destroying it. I'm gonna do some playtesting, then get back to you. With 3 hours left in the jam, Dead Weight has been released. I'm making this video before I know if I got featured or anything or what place I came in, so we'll see how it turns out. You can play the game through the link in the description of the video and leave a comment to tell me what you think of the game. It was a really fun experience working with 3D, especially with the limited time frame of a game jam. What I can say is that 3D is hard and too complicated for me. I'll think I'll go back to 2D for a while. Also, to think that I started this by saying I wanted to make a chill farming game, and then I ended up making a hectic first-person shooter. Anyways, thank you for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. Please leave a like and subscribe, and stay tuned for my next video. Have a good day.